Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Wire Wrap. With me today I have editor of the third poll Omair Ahmad and founding editor of The Wire Siddharth Varadarajan. Thank you both for joining me. A week from today, Donald Trump is going to be sworn in again as the US president. He's going to be the first convicted felon to be entering the White House after a court granted him an unconditional discharge in the hush money case involving adult film star Stormy Daniels. This basically means that his conviction stands, but the judge has said that he won't have to face imprisonment or any sort of fine. Since he won the election and even before he has officially assumed office, he's been going around saying things that have international consequences. He's threatened to take over Canada, annex Greenland, roll back Panama sovereignty. And obviously this has caused some consternation, though it remains to be seen whether this is all bluster or really part of his agenda. There's also been controversial appointments that he's been making, both within the government and organizations he set up that are kind of extra government, like the Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to head. Within the government, he has said that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be his health secretary. He is an open anti-vaxxer. A former WWE CEO, Linda McMahon, is going to be the education secretary. And all of this has raised a number of questions. Some of these appointments are not Musk and Ramaswamy, but the others will have to be confirmed by the US Senate. Omair, what do you make of the developments we're seeing in the US, and what do you think they portend for the rest of the world?
Well, interesting times, definitely. But you've got to put in a couple of caveats when it comes to Trump. One is he only has one term. He's not going to get another term. So he's got 3 years in which to make his mark. You also have to factor in his age and the fact that he comes in as the head of an insurgency against dominant political parties. He's as much against the traditional Republican Party as he is against everything else. Whether you look at his remarks against Canada, against Greenland and thus the EU, or the Panama Canal, what you kind of see is this. So you have to look at it as an America First approach that is about a person who's trying to show that I am the head of a rentier economy, right? And we saw a bit of it in his last administration when he pushed for NATO countries to up their contribution to NATO, where he talked about Korea and Japan upping up, paying for the American defense. So instead of America as a guarantor of security in these things, it's more as America as a mob boss, which is also a guarantor of security, but also at a certain price and on certain terms.
Again, and with a more expansionist agenda.
Expansion. His push seems largely initially against people or areas close to him. Calling the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and all of that. I would wait and watch how much of this plays out. Luckily, India is far away from a lot of this, so in a sense, it doesn't make much sense for us as Indians to react to a lot of these things before things become policy. Siddharth?
What he said at some level is so shocking that the world, even as it has to take it seriously, is hoping that somewhere down the line this guy is going to dial back when he's actually president. There are good reasons to imagine that that might happen, because even though Trump has sort of individualized and concentrated power in perhaps an unprecedented fashion in the US, right? This is a system that has had 250 years of fairly complex and robust checks and balances, right? You have the legislature, which is powerful. You have the judiciary, which is powerful. You have institutions which have run very often, disobeyed the diktat of the executive. Trump has managed to, collapse all of that. He's got the Republican Party, which he's against in a sense, culturally, institutionally. He's got Republican congressmen and senators dancing to his tune, largely because he has the economic firepower of Musk, this huge resource which they are openly threatening to use against, for example, even on confirmation hearings, they're saying any senator who opposes these nominees is going to face a challenge in the primary, funded by Twitter and by Elon Musk's money. So he's managed to get the party in line. So I don't know how much pushback there will be on Capitol Hill.
To be fair on that, I mean his push to get a budget improved in which he would have no ceiling didn't actually pass.
It didn't. It didn't. But I'm saying
there was a little bit.
I think that the when he's actually president and when he is able to push a lot of things, you may find the terrain again in his favor. But as I said, the first goal for Trump is to make sure that he gets his guys in, right? If you look at Trump 1.0, he was stymied by the fact that the people he chose to implement his agenda, whether it's at the State Department or even the National Security Advisor, Pentagon, these were guys who came from the old Republican guard. They were happy to play along with him, but then even they drew a line. And so you had this rapid turnover, people getting fired, people getting hired. He wants to avoid that mistake by just getting ideologues this time, right? And so he's using his the stick to make sure that these guys get past the nomination process. So Kash Patel at FBI, once they're in office, how they are going to behave, and how Trump, how seriously is he going to pursue? Of course, the Canadian claim, I don't think so very seriously. Greenland is a different kettle of fish, for the simple reason that Greenland's own relationship with Denmark is complex, right? So annexation or an invasion is out of the question, because that Denmark is a NATO country, right? So you're basically triggering mutual. I mean, it's like madness. It's madness. But if we were to engineer some kind of a discussion with the Greenland, government to form an association, and the Greenland government seems to be open to the idea of discussing things, right? So but whichever way the cookie crumbles, it's going to be deeply distressing for Europe, right? And you know that you're now dealing with the US that's in expansionist mode, grabbing territory perhaps for the first time in decades, and so this is the new reality, right? So I think if Trump follows through, and there's a part of me that actually wants him to follow through, this is going to upend
Everything.
the remnants, the kind of the post World War II model, right, was of America in a tight alliance with Canada, of course, with Europe. Europe didn't pay attention to developing its own foreign policy, its own security policy. There's been voices within Europe that we need to do that. Perhaps if Trump does this sort of thing, there will be a more assertive foreign policy. Of course, assertive European foreign policy from an Indian perspective would still be expansionist, it would still be imperialist, would be very different from the American one. But insofar as there are contradictions, you may find Europe willing to go against the US on certain key issues. Maybe the Israel-Gaza conflict would go differently. Maybe other conflicts would go differently. I don't know. So I think that this upending of the global system is something which is going to open up possibilities. And I think from the Indian point of view, right, the assumption when the campaign was on was that Trump is going to be unabashedly good for Modi and good for India. The assumption being that he wants to dial down tension with Russia and go against China. But on the China front, there's lots of blow hot, blow cold, right? And from the Indian point of view, the worst scenario would be that you have revival of Obama's old G2 concept, right, where US tries to reach some kind of an understanding with China, and your entire strategy in India for the last 3 decades, has been to present yourself to the US as
not China,
as somebody that they can actually team up with to deal with China.
Well, there's also 2 other things with China that really should be on our core agenda. One is that if Trump pushes this more mob boss approach or rentier economy approach to American supremacy, is that we have just now figured out some kind of modus vivendi with China right now on the Ladakh border. If the incoming Trump administration wants, instead of saying, okay, we're supporting India, as we do something, we're going to be in a really bad place.
Especially since the modus vivendi that you mentioned is limited just to the boundary, and as many have said, has put India at a disadvantage actually, right?
It's not in a good place.
Exactly. So,
because this is the other thing. In the first Trump administration, the Trump pushed in a lot of places, but didn't push American troops. He wanted others to do the heavy lifting. If it comes to the point, so far, Trump seems to be looking at the Americas and Europe, but if it comes to China Trump's administration wants us to do the heavy lifting, we don't know what that call will be and how costly that will be.
In fact, Mark Rubio and the guys who are part of Trump's foreign policy team have argued for a formal or a quasi-formal India-US military alliance. Now, that's something which even the most pro-American Indian politician, take Jaishankar for example, foreign minister, would be pretty wary of getting into, and for very obvious reasons. So if the pressure comes in the form, let's say there isn't a smooth rapprochement between Trump and Xi, right, between Washington and Beijing, the alternative, which is where Trump says to India, look, let's militarize the Quad. Even that would be something problematic for us. Right?
Both sides are
exactly.
And I mean, again, you look at the history of the first Trump administration. We cut off our trade with Iran on basically the diktat of the Trump administration, and that was a costly thing. We lost a lot of our maneuvering space simply because the administration said do it. What those costs will be with this administration, we do not know. It's kind of useless to fully speculate, but none of it looks nice from our point. So our whole thing is, just concentrate on the Americans and the Europeans.
No, but Jahnavi, we haven't even started talking about Pannu yet, right? And so this is Mr. Trump is inheriting this brilliant opportunity.
He's inheriting a Trump card.
Exactly. He's a Trump card vis-a-vis India. And we've had some, like Rahul Bedi, who's a defense reporter, writes for The Wire, has written about how there are very clear indications that one form in which Trump may try to encash that card is by saying you buy the American fighter jets for your next big purchase, which is on the cards, right? So the fact is that the recklessness of the Modi-Shah setup in trying to kill somebody in America and killing somebody in Canada, as the Canadians have alleged, the matter still has to go to trial. But the evidence that has emerged in the U.S. Indictment, for example, which the Indians have not dismissed the way they have the Canadian charge, suggests that an opportunity has been given to the U.S. to squeeze India, this government, perhaps even successive governments, right? So this is. And Trump, being transactional, being America first, is going to say, okay, show me the money. Yeah. You want out of this? You want me to slow down? You want me to not take the prosecution? I don't think they can forget it happened. Yeah. So you want me to confine it to Nikhil Gupta and Vikas Yadav, his name is, and not go higher up the food chain? Fine, but show me the money, right? So these are all very, very real issues that are going to confront the Modi government within months of Trump actually assuming office.
Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But moving to elections slightly closer to home, the Election Commission has announced the dates for the Delhi Assembly elections, which will be held on the 5th of February, and the votes will be counted on the 8th. We see the Aam Aadmi Party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and the Congress fighting it out, though most reports suggest that the big fight is likely to be between the first two. And it's been interesting in that up until a couple of years ago, AAP and the BJP weren't necessarily seen as completely opposed to each other in many ways, but that has dramatically changed, which is very visible in the Delhi excise policy case, in which arms of the union government arrested senior AAP leaders, including Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. And even in the run-up to the elections, we've been seeing how leaders of both parties have been, accusing each other of corruption, of misgovernance. But one of the other factors that has been playing into these elections is the use of rhetoric around Rohingya refugees in Delhi. Both parties have come out very strongly with anti-refugee rhetoric, accusing the other of bringing them in, giving them rights, and saying that, if we have the power, we'll make sure that they are disenfranchised, that only real Delhiites can exercise the rights that we are granting. This election is different in Delhi from the Lok Sabha polls in that the AAP and Congress are no longer aligned, and some India alliance partners have expressed their support for the Aam Aadmi Party, like the Trinamool Congress and the Samajwadi Party. So that, do you think that is going to affect how the results play out?
I don't think the India allies, beyond perhaps 1 or 2 seats, and even that I'm pretty doubtful about, are going to be decisive in terms of their, there is a significant Purvanchali vote, but I would imagine RJD is more impactful there than Samajwadi. There are lots of Bengalis in Delhi, but I don't think the vote in Chittaranjan Park is going to be decided by what Mamta says, right? So I think that it's cause for alarm for Congress and India bloc as a whole, because you have Omair raising questions about the future of India. So I think the coalition probably needs to get together and say, okay, where do we go from here at the national level, right? But as far as Delhi politics goes, you've touched upon an important tension, right, which is that the BJP and AAP, there should be no doubt in anybody's mind that they are at loggerheads. They hate each other, right? Plenty of people, even you still hear Congress people say AAP is B team of BJP and so on and so forth, and they go back to tracing the history of India against corruption. So all of that has been said, but there should be no doubt that Mr. Kejriwal is definitely on the warpath against the BJP and vice versa. This raises the question: how do we explain the rhetoric, right? Yeah. The anti-Rohingya, even rational people like Atishi, talking nonsense over Rohingyas and Bangladeshis and so on. It's deeply problematic, deeply distressing. I would say that this is an attempt by the Aam Aadmi Party, a desperate attempt to try to use cards that the BJP traditionally uses. We've seen other parties do it with a much lesser degree of success.
Some would say it's not surprising even coming from them, given how the communal violence in 2020 played out.
See, my assessment of AAP is that you see this in the Congress too, right? Reluctance to openly confront Hindu communalism can come either because you are somebody who sympathizes with Hindu communalism, or you have this misguided notion that if I'm critical of targeted violence against minorities, then somehow the majority is going to be alienated from me. The Congress for a long time pulled its punches. Like they went after Modi in 2002, 2003 as Chief Minister. But after that, they kept off that topic because they were convinced, Ahmad Patel convinced them, that the more you gun for Modi because of his anti-Muslim politics, the more you're going to help him consolidate the Hindu vote back, right? So Congress kept off Modi and Modi's communalism for years. My sense is that AAP is coming from that space. I have yet to see, although the Rohingya and Bangladeshi thing takes them closest to, communal articulation, right? I'm just hoping that this is a tactic on their part. In my view, it's a misconceived tactic, because you cannot, with this kind of majoritarian politics, you can't cut, loha loha ko nahi katta hai, as the Hindi phrase goes. It becomes a race to the bottom. So you could see at that Bihar, just to change topic slightly, that Bihar event for Vajpayee, where this woman sings Raghupati Raghav Raja Ram, right? Yeah. And she comes to the Ishwar Allah Tero Naam. There's a commotion, but the commotion, if you listen to it carefully, is basically 10, 12 guys in the audience shouting, right? But those 10, 12 guys in the audience have the ability to set the tone and tenor for the whole event. So, and I know that BJP leaders at the apex level will be quite embarrassed that this, it's very bad optics for the party as far as, middle class supporters and fence sitters are concerned. But it's the most rabid guys who set the tone, right? So it's the same. If you think you can beat the BJP by targeting poor Rohingya refugees, whose numbers are minuscule in any case, they have fled a genocidal situation. I would say actually that the protections of the CAA, if any section of, if any religious minority in a neighboring country deserved that, it was the Rohingyas, right? But I don't expect AAP to make that. Even Congress will not make that argument. But I think it is pretty appalling. I just hope that, and I'm pretty confident that this election, at the end of the day, just like 2024 election, Modi's attempts to communalize, people finally voted on the basis of other issues, and I think that's going to happen in Delhi too.
I'm going to make a slight. I hear you, but I disagree. And I disagree partially because AAP is probably our first urban party in India when you look at it in terms of as that, which is even you can see it even in Punjab with its inability to deal with agriculture and the crises around it. Uh, and part of the urban party thing has been the sense of the middle class moral panic, right? Uh, and it's not just the 2020 issue where AAP basically either said, we'll clear the streets and hid when the violence actually happened. But you go back to 2014, right? Just after they get elected, Somnath Bharti goes on this crusade against African tenants in Kirki. And I agree, it's a misguided idea that you have to play to the moral panic of the middle class RWA uncle, right? But it has been a part of the AAP thing from its get-go, whether it's India against corruption, whether it's the Delhi rape thing, and it's not a good look, it's not a good sign. And I think this is actually goes deeper to that question of the India alliance, right? What does the India alliance stand for? If the Indian alliance stands for merely fighting for their own turf, which is what, in one sense, TMC or the Thakre Shiv Sena or AAP or the others are doing, then though that turf will always be outbid by the BJP's complete control of the narrative, right? If you're giving way to them for that, yes, this may be an idea that, okay, we'll also play this card to survive and fight the next day, and after the elections this doesn't have to be important, but you've already ceded ground, right? And
Omair, I want to separate out the India Alliance question, right? Because my understanding of the premise of India Alliance was that nationally we will come together, but we will fight our fights in the states where we, right? So I didn't expect, frankly, for the Delhi Assembly.
Delhi Assembly, there's really no.
But the wider question as to what's the value of an India Alliance if you can't be clear about the fate of 10,000 Rohingyas living in India, right? Or even if it's 1 lakh.
It's
right?
not so much the fate of 10,000.
That's distressing.
Yeah, it's not just the 10,000. It's a question of rule of law. Yeah. Really, do we live in a country where the laws are what govern us, or the mob govern us? And that really is a key question that we have to answer, and that has to be confronted very quickly. If everybody is willing to simply bow down before the mob, then hey, it's no longer a country.
Yeah. I mean, the deeper problem, Jahnavi, is that AAP, at the end of the day, does not have a clear ideology, right? What does the party stand for? It's not enough to say you're against corruption, right? So they borrow and pick from here and there.
Especially after so many years in power.
Exactly. So what's distressing for me is that I could look at somebody like Atashi, right? Or I could look at somebody like Gopal Rai.
Even Somnath Bharti.
Sanjay. Let me pick out Sanjay Singh, Gopal Rai, Atashi. Right? These are people who I can understand. They have an ideological background, right? Kejriwal less so, so what you have finally is a mishmash, and if they've managed to get Atashi to front all this appalling stuff on Rohingyas, it's not a good look. It's not a good sign. It's a bad augury. I'm just assuming that the Delhi voter is going to vote not on the basis of the scaremongering on Rohingyas, whether by BJP or the Congress, BJP or AAP, but on other factors.
Some of the candidates the BJP has nominated, most of their laurels rest
on being the
on this
mob.
kind of thing, like Ramesh Bhiduri, Kapil Mishra. What are they known for? They're known for the 2020 speeches they gave, or what Bhiduri did in Parliament.
Yeah, and that is something that the opposition parties have to clearly state, that we need to be a country not ruled by the mob. And that somebody's got to have the guts to actually state that, and the others have to rally around it. You can't hunt with the hounds and run with the hare. It doesn't work, because all you do is get eaten, right? And I mean, Shiv Sena has seen that very clearly. That's what ends up happening. So you want to be eaten, then this is the way you go.
One of the things, I mean, just to conclude this discussion, one of the things AAP has been saying is going for it, that it's the only party in the fray currently which has a very clear chief ministerial face, which has leaders that people recognize locally who have been seen to be working for Delhi. Do you think that's something that's likely to maybe distract from this sort of rhetorical debate? And
I think Kejriwal has a certain charismatic appeal that has not diminished as significantly as the BJP would hope. So Kejriwal's face and name is a factor for the BJP. Whether you haven't nominated, whether the BJP or Congress doesn't have, I don't think that matters too much, frankly, because BJP.
I guess maybe it's not less whether they name a person or the lack of a recognizable leadership.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't, I think you look at the Haryana election, or, Maharashtra, okay, there was Fadnavis always there, right? And you had Shinde and other big names. But the Maharashtra election, once they purged Manohar Lal Khattar from there, the perhaps most recognizable face was that Anil Vij guy, which is not a good look for the party, right? And so I think if there is an election of the kind, like if the BJP wins on the basis of fear-mongering, on the basis of the double-engine case, let's not forget, right, that they have stymied any possibility of good work in the capital by hampering the state government, right? So maybe the voter says, okay, look, I know it's unjust, but if I want my road repaired, if I want things to function properly, maybe I need this wretched double-engine ki sarkar, right? So maybe the people who vote for BJP will do so out of those. So I don't think the lack of a face is going to be that much of a factor.
I would actually argue another thing, which is that, and again, you look at the 2014, the 2015, 2020 elections, is that the Aam Aadmi Party has largely won not because of headline management, but more by its work with Jhuggi Jhopdiwalas. Actually, that's what I mean about actually getting things done. In that sense, I don't think that the BJP has managed to break that. But again, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see the election results. The other thing is, the last Delhi elections were run with Amit Shah's face, which was quickly, hidden away after they got beaten really badly. It's very interesting that Amit Shah has learned the lesson that he's unelectable in Delhi, or the BJP has learned that lesson, and that's why they don't have a face, and that's why also they might be pulling out all of the guns for this particular election, because they were deeply humiliated by that. Certainly, Shah himself was. That was his chance to be on the national stage. I mean, had he been Chief Minister of Delhi, it would have been an excellent positioning for his next innings, whatever that may be. But the last Delhi elections put a pin on that.
I suppose, less than a month to go now, so we'll see how that works. The third thing I thought we should talk about today is the continuing conflict in Manipur. It's been more than a year and a half that the ethnic violence has been continuing, and even now the situation is tense and volatile. Just in the last week or 10 days, there's been news of curfew being implemented in some districts, Assam rifles and locals getting into conflict with them being accused of using pellets and rubber bullets against protesters. And in all of this, the state government's role has come out as deeply dubious. On the 31st of December, the Chief Minister N. Biren Singh issued an apology to the people of the state about all the loss they've faced, whether it's their loved ones or their homes. More than 250 people have died since May of 2023. And but yet Singh has continuously been peddling this rhetoric that there are some illegal immigrants, as he calls them, that are behind all of this, and so in some ways I guess his hands are tied, even though so many times from within the state and outside his role has come under serious question, particularly with some submissions that have been made to the Commission of Inquiry that the Ministry of Home Affairs has set up. Another recent report that came out was an investigation by the Guardian, which was that Starlink satellite internet is being used in Manipur. Now, this internet is not licensed in India, though it is available in Myanmar, which is close to Manipur. This is a satellite internet service that has been set up by Elon Musk, and Musk has been very keen that India allow its use. But given the Indian government's proclivity to shutting down the internet anytime they see a problem, introducing satellite internet services already is a very regulated space, but that would also then open other issues up for the government. For instance, Manipur itself saw the world's largest internet shutdown in 2023. This conflict is now long-standing and in some ways sort of enters national media and imagination only when an extreme event happens, but the fact that everyday lives are still deeply disrupted and the state is still living in this extremely abnormal situation doesn't seem to be as much in conversation. It's been a year and a half. The Prime Minister has not seen it fit to visit, though he has sent the Home Minister a couple of times. Omair, what do you think all of this says?
I mean, I wrote about this earlier. This is the first time that we've seen the Prime Minister secede from a state within the Indian Union. I mean, this is just, it's bizarre. I don't know, Siddharth, is there any other situation where a chief minister has continued in power despite civil unrest continuing? I mean, Modi continued in power, but the civil unrest was still brought under control after a couple of the peak of it within the couple of weeks, and then a couple of months. However brutally and however unevenly. I don't know of a single instance that I can recall of any chief minister in India since independence who has continued in power after the outbreak of violence at such levels without the violence being controlled within a few days or the chief minister being removed. This is just a total dereliction of duty to call for governor's rule. And it's bizarre. The fact that we can continue with our lives like this is just, I mean, it's not as if the other governors' rules have all been great, and it's not necessarily that those have been a panacea for it. But for the chief minister to just be a complete and utter pillock and be allowed to continue is just, I don't even know what it says.
I mean, the problem here is goes beyond Biren Singh's manifest incompetence as an administrator to credible allegations of open bias, right? So you not only have continuing violence, which the centre is tolerating without invoking powers that it is legitimately able to do, right? Like 356, for example.
And would absolutely have if any other
I don't think there would be any
party were in power.
Exactly, and I don't think there would be any criticism from jurists or anybody else. Right? This is a textbook case under Bombay, or whichever law you want to invoke, right? And you're doing this. You're giving a long rope to a guy who not only fails to control the violence, but is through his biased activities has a role in its continuing, right? The speech that you mentioned, the so-called apology of Biren Singh, he mentioned sort of sotto voce. The apology was for the indigenous people, to the indigenous people. Now, what does he mean by that? If you link that to his continuous allegation of Kukizos being infiltrators, illegal immigrants, etc. Right? So you have a CM who's in whose mind the indigenous people of Manipur are the Meiteis only. Everybody else is a foreigner or a migrant or a settler or an illegal settler, infiltrator, whatever term they want to use, right? So he's apologizing to one section of the people, and it's a bizarre kind of a statement to make. And of course, he apologies are rare. even if they are insincere, even if they're limited. Mr. Modi never apologized for the 2002 violence in Gujarat that happened on his watch. Biren Singh should be credited for at least being able to say, I'm sorry. But it's completely insincere and insincere and completely bogus. And but you mentioned Stalin. It's inevitable, right? I don't see a situation where the government of India is ever going to allow services like Starlink, right? For the simple reason that these providers, even if Elon Musk agrees with the idea that you can have a shutdown of Starlink for law and order reasons, which I doubt he will agree, implementing them when these machines are all, when the instruments, it's much harder to do. It's not even if it's not a switch that government of India can control, right?
The switch goes to other hands.
And this is the government that's so paranoid that a Scottish trekker who had some kind of a sporting device which had GPS that communicated directly to a Garmin device gets arrested and charged at Delhi airport, right? So this is not going to happen. And the fact that it's happening, the fact that Starlink machines are being used, should be another wake-up call for the government of India, right? Because you're allowing continuation of an insurgency, violation of laws, with complete impunity, in a border state, in a sensitive border state, in a state which borders Myanmar, which is itself in a state of meltdown. If you look at the advances made by the Arakan army, for example, what Myanmar might be 3-4 years down the road could be very different from what it is today. So it's a major security concern for India. And frankly, whatever the Modi government may say about being a tough government, chhappan inch ki chhati, China ko aankh dikha diya, etc., all of that pales in insignificance, right? It's all rubbish anyway, right? But you have here a classic security, challenge for India, and you're just letting it fester.
I think also this goes back to our thing about Trump. When we talk about Trump or any other big change on the global stage, when you talk about it in context of India, India has manifestly not had a security, defense, or strategic policy of any name whatsoever for the last 11 years. I mean, if you had anything like a look east or act east policy, you would have controlled the violence in Manipur immediately. You would have figured out some way to deal with Myanmar. You would not be attacking Rohingya refugees because it goes against any kind of strategic logic of how you manage your Eastern Front. We have nothing. I mean, these are jokers, they're clowns playing around. Because if you had any kind of deep thinking on this, you wouldn't indulge in this kind of thing. Because if your only point is to win the next local, regional, municipal election, you don't need to care about whether India's prospects of managing the Eastern Front are in the garbage bin for the next decade. And so you don't. And
But the irony here is that they're not even winning the elections.
Exactly, the
Yeah,
Lok Sabha
right.
elections.
So honestly, it begs the question: what are you guys up to? Right? What hidden factors, like Biren Singh, even Siddharth Mridul, the former Chief Justice of Manipur, spoke about a hidden hand. What is this hidden hand? Who is allowing the violence to continue, and why? We know that it's the Prime Minister and the Home Minister who are allowing it to continue, because they are the ones who have the ability to stop it. So the question that people across India should be asking is, Mr. Modi, why are you not stopping this violence?
Yeah, because I guess at this point it's not even clear what's in it for them to.
it just seems that there are, I mean, the loss of life is horrible. How long it will take to rebuild any kind of trust or community in Manipur is just, now after almost 2 years, is just, I don't know how one does that. The costs to our security on that border are immense, and the chances of trade across that border are, just all of that is gone, and this party is losing its seats in the national election. So I mean, it just baffles the mind what is happening in Manipur and why, in any sense, it's allowed to continue.
So we know that in 2002-3, when Vajpayee had made up his mind that Modi must go, right? We have it on authority now from people like Arun Shourie, Yashwant Sinha, who were witnesses to that time, that it was L.K. Advani who alerted Modi and worked out a strategy where the Goa BJP conclave Modi would not be displaced, right? So who is backing Biren Singh today? Who is it who, and what maneuvers are they doing? I think the nation wants to know. And you know, the thing is that I would say, you know, clearly the fact that Mr. Modi has outsourced Manipur entirely to Amit Shah, who's also not doing, you know, he's I think been there 2 times,
Yes.
two
And
times,
barely done anything.
you know, and you know, you have him make very banal statements about how I have instructed. You know, the last time there was a flare up, he says I have instructed the state government to ensure that law and order is brought under control. Right? If this is what the Home Minister is saying after a year and a half, 60,000 people
Yeah.
displaced.
If all that was waiting was your instruction,
was your
then
instruction, right? Then
yeah.
then please, you know,
Instruct
you know,
faster.
go or go, you know, maybe go and run the cricket board instead of your son, right?
Well,
You
no,
know,
no, no. Cricket board is also important. It's a lot of money. I don't think even the cricket board management would deal with this level of epic, whatever it is.
Okay, well, I think that draws us to the close of our program for today. Thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you for watching.